Hi, and welcome to another episode of Take What You Need. I'm Kate, I'm your host today. So today's topic is going to be around being seen. This one is really personal to me and is the whole reason that I started this YouTube channel. But before we start, let's get settled in and grounded into this episode. So close your eyes, put your hands, both hands or one hand, on your heart. Take a really big inhale. Roll your shoulders up and back, and big exhale, sigh it out. And one more time, inhale. Shoulders up and back. Exhale and sigh it out. And hi, welcome to this episode. So as I said, today is all about being seen. The fear of being seen, the fear of not being seen, all the things relating to being seen. So as the name of the channel suggests, take what you need from this episode, leave the rest, and let's begin. Okay, so why did I start this YouTube channel? Well, really, I've spent years being afraid of being seen. And that means being seen in my most authentic self, in my silliest self, in my hottest self, sexiest self, also in the worst in inverted commas, versions of myself, of the low moments in my life too. I've just tried to project to the world this really, I suppose, fake kind of false impression of myself that I felt was palatable to the world and would gain me acceptance and connection and love from the people that I wanted it from. And that honestly has served me pretty well throughout my 20s. Like, actually really well throughout my 20s. I had a huge group of friends and I loved them all and it was great. But what became very clear as I started to move into my late 20s, early 30s, was that these people firstly liked me for a version of me that wasn't real, and actually was very hard and taking a lot of energy to keep up that facade of being. But also, they actually weren't really in alignment with the sort of people that I wanted in my life. And that was through no fault of their own. It was because they'd bought into a story that I'd sold them, which is kind of fair enough, right? So over time, basically, I realised that in order to get really deep connections with the people that I wanted to and call in the people into my life that were really aligned to me, that had similar values, that were interested in the same things, I was going to have to, worryingly, be myself and really show up as the most authentic version of myself. And let me tell you, there is a lot of things people are scared of in life, heights, spiders, things like that. But having spoke to most people, one of their biggest fears, or the biggest fear to them, is the fear of being seen for themselves. Because what happens when you are your authentic self? Well, firstly, you've nowhere to hide. So if people don't like you and people don't accept you, then that's personal. That's not that they're not liking the fake version of you or the masked version of you, and you can suddenly chameleon yourself into a different version of yourself that's more palatable. Once you decide to stand in who you are, who you want to be, and to attract people in like that, you actually kind of become quite isolated and solitary at the outset, which is terrifying. Because you want to be seen, you have a real desire and I suppose yearning for deeper connection with the right people, but then at the same time you feel like your life is crumbling and you don't have anybody like that. Because it takes time for, I suppose, the oil tanker of your personality to turn around and start to bring in those people and start to call in the people that are meant for you, that adore your personality, your authentic personality, and adore all your quirks and adore all your flaws and want to know more about you and have the same weird little interest. And I think that first step of deciding is actually the hardest. Deciding that you want to be seen as your most authentic, truest you version of yourself. That is, I suppose, like the leap of faith that you have to make. You have to trust within yourself that by showing up as yourself, people will love that. In fact, I'll correct that. The right people will love that. And it can be really painful because those people that might be in your life that are expecting you to behave or show up in a certain way actually might not like who that authentic version is. And that's okay. And you have to be okay with them not liking that. Because you kind of have to have the autumn of friendships to like clear them out in order for you to make room for those that are like truly aligned to your authentic version of yourself. But that's really hard. And I don't think that's talked about enough when you're on a journey of being seen for yourself and stepping into your truest nature. The loss and the grief that takes out of you is huge. It's brutal, in all honesty. You lose people that you genuinely thought would be your friends forever, that you'd been really close to, that you'd shared loads of personal details to and inner workings and everything. And then you kind of realize that they're not quite right for you through no fault of their own or through yours, just that you want to evolve into the highest version of yourself, the most authentic version of yourself. And not everybody can come along with that. And that's okay, because they're probably meant to be hanging out with people in a different version of themselves and things like that. So it's tough, but I just thought I'd acknowledge that the first step of being seen is deciding to show up as your authentic self. The second part of it is to be really aware that people who you thought were your best friends or thought you were going to be really close to or developing a friendship with might not be the people at the end of the journey or the midway through the journey. And that's okay, because it's making room for the people you're basically attracting in. I always feel that like the universe works in big yeses and big nos, and it only gives 3 answers. It says yes to your questions. It says no, not now, or no, there's something better. And this absolutely applies to being seen. So I always hold those 3 elements in my head when people come and go into my life. The next part of being seen is, who are you? Like, who is your most authentic self? So you've decided it. You've decided to step into that version of you. You've decided that you want to show people who you truly are. But who actually are you? Under all the conditioning, under all the like people pleasing, all the areas that you think you should be showing up in life, are you actually showing up as your authentic self? Or are you showing up with a mask on? And that is one of the hardest areas to identify. So what I did a number of years ago was actually do a life audit of how do I show up? And that could be at work. Now, at work, it might not be appropriate to always show up as your most authentic self, but you can show up as your authentic self in a professional manner. So I'm not going to show up in my cute little dresses with a bit of an attitude. I show up as my authentic self, but manage it in a professional way. So I feel that I have integrity and I've not crossed any of my own boundaries that I give for myself, but also I don't get sacked. So work is one element of it. So if you think of a life wheel with like work, environment, friends, family, socializing, things like that, how do you show up in each of those areas? So an example I'll give is in my friends area, there were some friends that I felt I could 100% be my weirdest, most authentic self with, and there would be no judgment, just like general silliness and general joy that we were all showing up so honestly and openly in the world as ourselves. But then I had other friends that I maybe took on a different role in the group, or I'd kind of been pigeonholed into roles within those groups of friends that actually didn't fit with who I am. And it felt like every time I spent time with them, I was either acting or playing a role or just having a mask. And that was really interesting once I started doing that audit of who do I spend the most time with, and on a scale of 1 to 10, how authentically do I show up or feel comfortable and safe to show up in those friendships and in those social situations. And it was actually really, really enlightening and honestly quite sad once I started looking into this, because it turned out I would say 90% of the social occasions or friendships in my life, I actually wasn't really showing up in a way that I felt was honest and true, which was quite enlightening for me and a bit of an epiphany. So I actually decided, I thought I had two options here. I can either show up as myself, hard launch, or I can soft launch it. Or I suppose third option would be, do I even want to be in these social circles if I've spent so long faking it? Do they even feel good to me anymore? Are they even aligned to me? So the ones that weren't aligned to me either had a conversation around how kind of where we're at in each other's lives right now wasn't really suiting me. And you can say this in a really non-hurtful way, but essentially that we're just on different paths, and now is not the time for us to be close friends, but maybe in the future our paths will converge again. The areas where I hard launched myself were probably with my closest friends, and honestly I'm not sure they really noticed a difference, or if they did, they certainly didn't say anything. They just seemed to embrace me even more, which was wonderful. And the second option, which was kind of soft launching my authentic self, was just bringing elements of myself that I felt comfortable to social occasions, just to give glimpses of it and kind of test the waters and see how they responded to that. And depending on their response was really dependent on how much energy I wanted to put into that relationship going forward. For example, there might have been some people that were kind of like, why are you being so weird? And a little bit judgmental, and maybe a little bit essentially making me feel like I needed to be smaller in order to be palatable in that friendship group. And that for me was a real sign that maybe this friendship isn't aligned if this is how I'm going to show up going forward. But there was also people that seemed to really enjoy it. So the more they enjoyed seeing the real me, the more kind of I would be open to that with them. And that has really helped deepen the friendship. So that's the next part really, is essentially the life audit of where are you showing up authentically or not. And it might be that you're not showing up authentically anywhere. And that is fine. That's completely okay. But at least you know where you stand now, and you can choose options of, do you just want to hard launch yourself? Do you want to soft launch and give little like glimpses of your most dazzling authentic self? Or do you just need to cut some people from the areas of your life or situations in the areas of your life that are making you feel like you need to be smaller and need to be less of yourself? Because really being seen really comes down to like, how much are you willing to let go of the fear that you're too much, or that you're too this, or you're too weird, or you're too talkative, or you're too opinionated. That's really what the fear of being seen is, for me anyway. Of like, the example with me is that I felt too much for people, too odd, too silly, too kind of, I don't know, sentimental. All of these things, I just constantly felt too much. So a really easy way to work out how I felt about people and situations was to think, do these situations, people make me feel like I need to be less to be accepted? And if they did, then you take the steps that you need to in order to move forward from that, I suppose. So that's the next step. You do your life audit. And then I suppose really it's about, how do you want to show up? Like, when you think of your most authentic self, I like to think of it as my highest self. How do I want to show up in situations? How do I want to show up with people? What's the energy I want to bring to these relationships, to these connections, to these social occasions, to work? What energy do I want to bring? How do I want to feel in these situations? And the short answer is, for me, when it comes to being seen, I want to be my most dazzling, radiant, best self. And honestly, when you start showing up in that energy, you become magnetic. And what you begin to magnetize are the people that are right for your life, that are aligned to that frequency that you're in, that love your dynamism, that love how dazzling you are, that love how radiant you are. In fact, they're like, please give us more, be bigger, be more you, we want more. So you never feel too much, you actually feel like completely expansive and given complete space and grace to be fully yourself. And when you start to call in connections like that, then your life starts to change. That is when you really genuinely step into the energy of your authentic self. And anybody that doesn't feel like that to you and doesn't inspire that kind of energy in your life just feels completely wrong. And it's really, really easy to tell. You don't have to sit and do a life audit or a friend audit around any of this. You just feel the energy and you feel who feels good, who doesn't feel good, what situations feel good, what don't. And you also start to learn what your boundaries are too. Because I promise you, your authentic self has really different boundaries to the persona you've been given to the rest of the world previously, before you decide to step into this version and be fully seen. You'll have totally different boundaries. And I personally literally wrote those boundaries down because it's a really good reminder when people cross them that you understand the feeling within yourself of, like, where is that ickiness coming from? Why do I feel so uncomfortable in this situation? Why am I so moody or angry or frustrated? And the likelihood is that you've probably been in a situation or around people that make you feel like you need to be smaller, that don't, like, maybe get triggered, I suppose, by you showing up as your most authentic self, because people will, trust me. You know, people don't always want to see people being radiant and dazzling and magnetic because it really triggers a sense of lack in them. So there can be lots of these environments, and you'll start to notice it as you really become more and more magnetic, the more you practice being authentically you. But your boundaries are what really can ground you in kind of the structure of your authentic self, which I think is really needed, because it becomes the foundations and it becomes a support, particularly if you are not consistently showing up as your authentic self. They can just keep you kind of on the right path going forward. So boundaries essentially are really, really personal. So I'm not going to list some examples, but for me, I know when a boundary has been crossed because it feels gross to me internally. The energy feels gross, I feel uncomfortable, I may feel frustrated, I may feel overwhelmed, I may start ruminating or overanalyzing how people perceive me. I might start overthinking situations. Those for me are all indicators that one of my boundaries has been crossed through probably no conscious fault of the other person. I don't believe that fundamentally people are out to make me feel uncomfortable. I think most people come from a place of great intent and good intent, but they just might not always be at the same kind of frequency and level that you are at this moment in your life. So it's really important to understand those feelings within yourself and understand which boundary has been crossed in order to kind of reinstate that boundary and just recenter, bring it back, remind yourself who you are, who you want to be, what you're working towards, who you're wanting to show up as, which version of you want to show up as, and then just go forward again. And that's okay. And it might be that you can't avoid these people in your life, and that's really, really normal. We have to work with people, we have to socialize with people that we might not always feel good around, and that's okay. You can just limit your time with them. You can limit how much energy you give to them, and you can focus that energy on deepening connections with other people by showing up really authentically with the people that respond best to you and to your open energy and your dazzling energy. So there's a few things there really that we've just covered around showing up as yourself. Firstly, it's really, really scary. Secondly, you need to do an audit of where you're not showing up as your most authentic self or where you are. Then you need to do a little bit of work on what does that look like? Who do you want to show up as? Who is your true authentic self? And what are their boundaries within situations? And as I said, I literally write them out because I find that's the easiest way to really, really understand and get my thoughts out of my head. But you might want to speak them out loud. You just might want to think them and acknowledge them. All of that's okay. Do what you want. It doesn't really matter, just as long as you're aware of kind of how you want to show up and what you will and won't accept. Because being your authentic self requires standards. And it requires hard standards, and it requires standards that are implemented and held in your life. And when they start to slip, so will your alignment with your highest, most authentic self. That's when you'll feel less dazzling, less radiant, and you'll start showing up maybe more of a people pleaser, more trying to placate, more trying to manage others' emotions. Maybe start showing up wearing clothes that are not quite you, but you feel like you'll be accepted by people. They're really good tells to know when you've slipped out of that. So these are just some ideas of how you can begin to start showing up as yourself and being seen. And then I suppose the final step is actually what I'm doing right now, which is actually being seen. So as I said, I've done all these elements in my life that I've just talked you through over a number of years. This is not a quick fix. And honestly, even to this day, even filming this video, I feel nervous about showing up as this version of myself, as my most authentic self. It feels a bit odd to be talking on camera and sharing this with other people. And there is a large part of me that's sat here being like, I'm not sure that my hair looks great, and I need my roots doing, and I need my makeup doing, and what if people don't like my accent, and what if some friends see this and they think I'm silly? And then I just need to take a step back and remember, this is the work. This is showing up as my authentic self, and the people that want to see that and enjoy seeing my authentic self, people who I'm meant for, they will enjoy this. It will be their vibe. They'll be my tribe. And the people who don't want to see that version of me can just scroll on. They cannot watch my videos. It doesn't matter. I am not here to be liked by everybody. I'm here to be seen by people that want to see me, but I'm not here to be liked universally. I'm here to deepen connections. I'm trying to be seen in my truest form, to encourage the deepening connections, to encourage the right people into my life, to encourage my tribe, to be able to share wisdom to the right people. And I really believe that these YouTube videos are the start of that for me. I'm not saying that you need to create a YouTube channel and do YouTube videos, but a good way to kind of do it is show up as yourself is through creativity. So maybe you could be seen through your art, through painting, through writing. Maybe you could be seen through drama. Maybe you could be seen through music. I don't know, whatever helps you feel like the most dazzling version of yourself, where you just feel so energized and radiant and excited about the situation, then do that. Follow your passion. And honestly, I'm a Leo rising. So me being seen is very much about me being physically seen as I am, like feeling good about myself and how I show up and how I represent in the world. So that's very Leo rising and very personal to me, but that's why I'm doing YouTube videos. But I really encourage you to find that area of your life for yourself. Where is, like, I suppose if we think of a video game, your boss level, what is your boss level of being seen? Where are you working towards? For me, this is the final piece. How do I stand up publicly and say, this is me? This is me, this is my most dazzling self, this is who I am, these are my thoughts, take it or leave it. That's essentially what this channel is doing, and I hope you can find that area for yourself, but only you know what that is, that being seen is. Where do you want to stand on that stage, and what is that stage about, essentially? So I hope this has been a helpful introductory video into being seen. I will be posting more videos around different topics, and I'll probably be doing another video on being seen, I suppose the part 2 of it, once I've had a bit more experience of being on this platform and doing these things, and hopefully I can share with you the pitfalls and the experiences that I've had in order to help you guys move forward. So as I say, take what you need from these videos, leave the rest, and thank you so much for joining me today.